All right, so it's time for our first jQuery exercise. The way that this one works is that I'm going to give you some sample HTML, 4 divs. Some have classes, some have IDs, and you'll take those 4 divs and put them in your own HTML file. And you'll need to include jQuery correctly. Up to you how you do that, if you want to use a CDN or if you want to download it. And then there are 4 quick challenges that I want you to attempt using jQuery, and in particular, the $ to select and .css to style. So the first one, select all divs and give them a purple background. The next one is select the divs with class highlight and make them 200 pixels wide. The third one is to select the div with the ID third and give it an orange border, up to you how wide and what style of the border. And then the bonus is to select the first div only and change its font color to be pink. So go ahead, give this a shot. You'll need to pause the video, create a new HTML file, include jQuery, and then copy this code in or type it up yourself. And then you'll need to solve these 4 challenges. So go ahead, pause the video. I'll be back in just a few seconds with the solution. Alrighty, let's go ahead and type up a quick solution to this. As always, the first thing we need to do is make our HTML file. So I have a new file, I called it exercise.html, and I'll save it and then add in my regular HTML boilerplate. And we'll just call this jQuery exercise in the title. And then I'll go ahead and add in our starter HTML, and I'll just copy it in rather than typing it. Okay, so we have the 4 elements. Now let's go and add jQuery. Remember, we have 2 ways of doing that. We can include it locally, or we can link to a CDN. So I'll show both. The first one, I'm just going to copy the file over. So I have the minified version here, just gonna Command C, Command V. So I now have it in the same directory as my exercise.html. And then I'll go over here, and the first thing that I wanna do is add a script tag. Script, and then I'll add source equals, and then I need to make sure that I match that correctly, which is jQuery-2.1.4.min.js. So jQuery-2.1.4.min.js. We'll save that and open it up in our browser and do our little test to see if it worked. It looks like it found the file, otherwise it would give us an error. And we can always try doing something like $ div and see what we get. And it's working. It's selecting our 4 divs. We can also include a jQuery CDN. And I just Google for that, jQuery CDN, and then pick our version. So we don't want 3.0. I'm sure it works fine, but that's the newest version and it's still an alpha. So there's probably some bugs and some issues. So 2.1.4 is the most recent stable version. Then we'll copy this URL, and then we'll add another script tag, and I'll leave them both here and just comment one out, and we set the source equal to that URL. So either one works. I'll use the CDN since I already proved to you that this one worked, just for variety's sake. So we'll save and then refresh and double check. Does our code still work? Yes, it's finding $ just fine. It's connected to jQuery. One point that I'd like to make is that we include jQuery up top in the head, and we use it in our scripts that we write down in the body. And the reason we do that, remember, things load in the order that they're declared. So we want our jQuery to definitely load before we use it inside of a script. So our script that we need to define is where we'll write our code, and we'll just call it exercise.js, and then we need to make that file exercise.js, and we'll put that right here in the same directory. And what we can do is a really simple test to see if it's connected both to our HTML file and to the jQuery, if it's able to see and use the jQuery methods. We'll just do something like this: if jQuery, else we'll do something else. So if there is jQuery, we will alert jQuery loaded, else we'll alert no jQuery, sad face. And save, And if we refresh now, we get jQuery loaded. So that tells us two things. One, this script is running, exercise.js is connected. And two, we're able to use the jQuery methods. If we did this in reverse order though, and I put jQuery after I included my exercise.js, and I save and refresh, we get an error which tells us jQuery is not defined. So you can see the importance of the order that we put things in. So we always want to put our libraries that our code depends on up top in the head. At the very least, we want to put them before our scripts that use them. Let's go back to the assignment. And the first thing we need to do is correctly include jQuery, which we've already done. Next up, we need to select all the divs and give them a purple background. So we'll go ahead and select all divs by using $. Inside of quotes, all we need to do is select div with CSS, so just div dot CSS, and we'll make them purple. So color, or background in this case, is purple. Or we could have used our own RGB shade of purple. And if you don't remember how we make purple with RGB, then you need to go play the RGB game a little bit more. So that's the first one. We can save and check that worked by refreshing, and we get 4 purple backgrounds. Okay, so that's that. That is selecting all the divs and giving them a purple background. I'll just add a little note here and comment that out. Next up, we want to select the divs with class equal to highlight and make them 200 pixels wide. So that will work very similarly, but to select the divs with class equal to highlight, what we need to do is use $ again, and rather than div, we can use dot highlight and then do CSS width, and that will be 200 px. It's worth noting that this technically selects anything that has the class of highlight. If we wanted to be explicit and say only the divs that have the class of highlight, we could have an anchor tag or a paragraph that also have that class. We would write this selector, and this is CSS that says all divs with the class of highlight. But in this case, it won't make a difference. So 200 pixel width, refresh, and you can see these two divs have the class of highlight, the second and the fourth div, and they have a width of 200 pixels. Okay, the next one is to select the div with the ID of third and to give it an orange border. So to select the div with that ID, $ again, and instead of dot, we need our octothorpe, and then the name of the ID, .css, border, and it's up to us. All I said was color is orange. So let's do a 2 pixel solid orange border, and save and refresh, and we now have that orange border right there. I'll make it a little bit bigger so that it shows better in the screencast. There we go. And that's around the third div, which has the ID of third. So the last challenge, which was a bonus, is to select the first div only and change its font color to pink. The way that we'll select the first div is using a CSS pseudo selector, first of type. So div : first dash of dash type, which you should be familiar with from some of the CSS selector videos. And then we'll just make it pink, .css, color, pink. And we save and refresh. And you can see that the color is pink. The other option that we have is there's actually a built-in jQuery shortcut, which is just :first, and that also works just fine. An interesting note is that using :first is actually a little slower than first of type, because first of type is built into CSS. It is a CSS selector, versus first is a jQuery shortcut. So it's not native CSS, it's just ever so slightly slower. So I would use first of type. Okay, so that's it for this exercise. In the next few videos, we're going to learn about other ways of manipulating things rather than just changing CSS.